never slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. Everything I do so instinctive and so passionate. Every word I move so descriptive like an adjective. I got a vendetta against people who patented being negative when you should be getting after it. I got facts over tracks, this and that. Spitting slow, spitting fast. I could roast, I could gas. Think I'm okay at last, but I don't know if that can erase all the past. And the pettiness, a reflection of the emptiness. Hilarious, you think you're worth my time, you're delirious. Mysterious, because you hide behind a fake exterior. Inferior, you know I'll always be a bit superior. Get off of me, this ain't no humble brag. I want you to hear words, you can say them back. I want you to feel free from the chains that last, and to believe in what you got, it was built to last, yeah. Now that I've been put through hell, I never got anyone's help. I had to do it all myself. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement.
All right, guys, we're here. We're live. You're watching Buster Unmasked. It's night 2 for this week. We got shows all week long. And look, you just seen it, man. You just seen the teaser once again. And here's the deal. The venue is a lock. It's locked in. KAW is coming. Get ready. Keep your eyes open and your ears open. More details, time, date, and place coming soon. Get ready. Violence, chaos, insanity, everything that is kick-ass wrestling. Look, guys, you know where you can find us. YouTube, Facebook, the X, and most importantly, Genesis TV. Every single Thursday night at 10 p.m. Central Time, you can catch Buster Unmasked on Genesis TV. And look, guys, this goes for everybody. Anybody out there that's got a show, a business, or a product. If you want to take it to the next level and take it to television, contact me, Buster H.R. Johnson on Facebook. Send me an inbox. Look, we're here at Genesis TV. We can provide you with the most affordable time slots and advertising rates you're going to find anywhere. Over 18 million, actually over 100 million views monthly on Roku and the Fire Stick. So if you want to take your product or business or show of any type to the next level, holler at Buster H.R. Johnson. Hit my inbox and we'll get you hooked up. Look, guys, tonight, we got a hell of a show, man. My guest tonight, we're going to learn about him together, man. He's a pro wrestling Mid-South guy. He is a hard-nosed, no-nonsense throwback to the pro wrestlers of yesteryear. He's none other than David Jason Rose. David.
How you doing?
I'm doing great, man. How you doing?
I can't complain.
Man, I'm glad to get you here, man. The show's been booked a while. We've been waiting on it for a good while, but tonight's the night, dude. We're going to learn about David Jason Rose, man.
I appreciate you having me, man. Like, yes, I've been watching for a long time, and it was time to get together.
Man, you know, I opened the show with throwback, man, and that's what I see you as, man. Like I said, me and you were talking a little bit. Pro Wrestling Mid-South is not a lot of footage is out there, man. You guys are really hard to research sometimes. But, dude, what I have seen of you, man, you remind me of old school traditional wrestlers. I know that's how you was trained. Let me ask you this. Let's just start out here. How long have you actually been wrestling, man?
In August it'll be 4 full years. So yeah, I started training in January of 2020 and had first match at the beginning of August that year. So
wow.
So yeah, kind of right at 4 years.
And you were trained. You're from start to from your start. You're a pro wrestling Mid-South guy.
I am. Yeah, I came up through the academy.
Okay. Well, look, I kind of like to jump around, and I kind of like to take everybody back before we really get into the meat of the wrestling. So, look, man, won't you take me all the way back to little David Jason Rose and kind of tell me about your upbringing? Tell me how you were raised, and tell me how you discovered pro wrestling, man.
It's one of those things. It's like I don't ever remember not being a wrestling fan. We lived in St. Louis when I was a kid, and we didn't have cable. So anytime that I watched anything, it had to be sort of VCR recorded from, a couple of nights before. But yeah, like I said, it's always been one of those things. It's never just not been there. Like I said, it was when I got older that it kind of became more of a priority, but it was always kind of there in the background. I said, yeah, just kind of always grew up loving it.
That's the same way I was, dude. I don't ever remember not having wrestling from probably 4 years old, dude. You growed up in St. Louis. I growed up in Helena, Arkansas, and our main wrestling was Channel 5, Jerry Lawler, old CWA, and I'm the same way, man. So look, man, you obviously you've been a wrestling fan your whole life. Who was some of the guys that as a kid kind of drawed you to wrestling, man?
Well, at that point, like the top guys were like, Triple H, and that was kind of where Evolution was. So that was the first real memory where I remember thinking, okay, I really need to sort of follow this. Was around that 2003, so I was 9. So yeah, seeing guys like Randy Orton, Batista, those type of guys. And then, as I got older, and obviously we have, like Peacock today, which,
right. When
I was 10 years old, I couldn't have imagined that. But now it is easier to go back and see some of the older stuff.
Yeah, I'm a Peacock dude too, but man, it's hard to go back and watch some of the older stuff because a lot of it they've cut up pretty bad, man. They've chopped it up pretty bad. I'm hoping since they're going to Netflix here soon, maybe all that content will be replaced and put back to its original format. Because they've cut a lot, but I forget how young some of you guys are. I'm sitting here thinking, and me and you about the same age. And so, how old are you, dude?
I'm 29.
Lord Jesus,
I'm 29. I'll be 30 in November.
I wish I was 29 again, man. So you're an attitude era guy, like you said, man. You got to live some of the greatest wrestling that's been lately, man, in our generation for sure. So
yeah.
So talk to me about when you decided that you were going to make the jump from being a fan of pro wrestling now take me back to when the first thought that ever come into your head about, I think I want to do this. How old was you when the very first thought, I think I want to do this?
Oh, that was probably 9 or 10 years old. That was, and then, life kind of gets in the way and, you get older and finally, and what really kind of set it off was WrestleMania 35. And it wasn't even anything to do with wrestling. It was like I had seen a picture of myself and I was like, I really need to make some lifestyle changes. And, started working out and dieting the next day. And by January, which, that was, April-ish. And by January, I wasn't by no means like a physical specimen, but I was in better shape where I was like, if I really want to give it a go, I could do it.
Right.
It's not going to be easy. But I certainly started late. I was 24, 25 at the time. So yeah, like I knew it wasn't going to be easy, but I was also really aware of my age that I wasn't getting any younger. Right. And if it was going to be time to go, it was now.
Right. You were still perfect age. I started training when I was 17, but you 24, man, you still in the right. You started at the right time, man. You didn't miss the cut. You didn't miss the cutoff, dude. There really isn't a cutoff in wrestling, but the older you get, the harder it is on your body. If you've never, when you start young, it don't phase you. And the younger you start, the easier your body can adapt to it. The older you get, man, them bumps take a different, them bumps feel different when you're older than they do when you're young, you know? So you started getting in shape, man, and you decided, well, the time's now. If I'm ever going to do it, I need to do it. So how did you find pro wrestling Mid-South?
From watching shows as a kid, I remember who the Golden Boy Greg Anthony was. And so being friends with him on Facebook, you know, obviously you see everything he promotes, and Pro Wrestling Mid-South was right there. So that was the page I messaged. And,
right.
You know, they set me with their schedule and their fee and all that kind of stuff. And you know, I said it just kind of went from there. I believe it was January the 20th, something like that. It was the end of January of 2020. So right before the pandemic really hit is when I had started.
Wow. Did the pandemic shut it down, or did y'all continue? Were you able to continue to train?
It shut the business down where we weren't able to run shows.
Right.
But as far as the training, we did have access to a ring. So yeah, like as bad as the pandemic was, it did kind of help me take lemons and make lemonade out of it, because I had much more extra time available because we didn't have a cutoff where, okay, we need to be out of here by a certain time because the show is going to start. I did have extra time.
Right. That's
so,
good.
So it did kind of move the process longer.
Yeah, it probably helped you along a lot, man. Any of the guys who trained with you at that time probably helped y'all a lot, because you, like you said, there ain't nothing you can do but train now. You're not doing no shows. You didn't know when you were going to do any shows, or even if, but you could definitely train. And so that probably played a big part in getting you in the ring a lot faster than maybe you would have if it would have just been, everything would have been normal, you know?
Absolutely, yeah. Like I said, Greg usually says it takes around between 6 months to a year before anyone's really ring ready, and I think I was one of the few that really hit that 6 month mark, because it wasn't the first show that we were back that I was on, but it was, I believe, the second show after coming back from COVID that I was able to be on.
Right. Well, look, take me back to that first day of training, man. You're 24 years old. You're walking in the arena, stepping into a wrestling ring, I'm assuming for the first time?
Actually, it wasn't the first time. It was the first time in a long time.
Okay.
As a kid, James Arnett and they used to run in Rector, Arkansas. So I had been around a ring. I had taken, a few bumps here and there, but that was years ago. This was basically relearning from scratch.
I know,
as it needed to be.
I know Arnez. He actually used to work for me in Paragould in probably 2006 and 7. He was part of the asylum.
That was probably right around the time I was in the ring.
Well, he
yes,
was
sir.
Part of the site, still doing the asylum gimmick, man, with the baby doll and all that.
Yes, sir.
Cool,
yep.
Cool dude, man. Really cool dude. I like James, man. So talk to me about getting in there that first day of training with Greg Anthony, because here's the thing. One thing we all know about Greg, he's a hell of a trainer. He's a hell of a pro wrestler, but if you want to be properly trained, he's one of the few guys that you can go to and get properly trained. So talk to me about that first day stepping in there and just kind of the things he had you do, and was it what you expected? Obviously, you had taken a few bumps. Like you said, you'd been in the wrestling ring, so you kind of knew what to expect. But when he kind of started putting y'all through the paces, what did your thoughts change? How was it for you?
It was definitely different. Like I said, there's pictures somewhere on my Facebook where, like, the next day, my arms had completely bruised up from taking the bumps. I wasn't. Like I said, my body didn't remember that from when I was, 12, 13 years old.
Right.
But in Greg runs, it's really old school too. It's kind of reminiscent of like when you watch the old Vern Gagne footage from when he's training guys. Like
right.
It's not nearly that extreme, but it is like you are subject to, some more of the elements such as the cold that, you just don't think of, especially because it's almost like a conditioning thing.
Right.
If you're going to wrestle blowed up, you're going to wrestle hurt, and this is to help you with that along the way. So like that was another thing that was a little different. Like I said, as far as taking a bump, I hadn't taken a bump in 10, 12, 13, 14 years. Like I said, my body had completely not that it was ever used to that to begin with, but it was, like I said, it was fresh start.
Right. It takes your body a while to get conditioned to taking bumps all the time, man. Your body, it's a shock to it. It ain't supposed to take no falls like that on a regular basis, but it's kind of like building up a callus. Your whole body kind of gets callous to the bumps. And drills, man, I was kind of trained the same way, man. They kind of trained us the same way. We trained in the heat in the summertime, in the freezing cold in the winter. Like you said, you wrestled blowed up, man. When you blowed up, you go out, you lean your head out the ring, and if you had to puke, and then you were right back in the rotation, So talk to me about some of the things Greg had you do as a trainee. What's the first thing Greg Anthony had you guys do?
One of the simplest things is just getting in the ring. You'd be shocked at how many people don't think to wipe their feet. And then once you get in there, and it's the first day is it's squat bumps. So yeah, like you're pretty much doing bumps until he's satisfied with them. I mean, it is the most basic thing we do. So, I mean, you do need to have that kind of down. I said, I don't remember the number of bumps that I took. It was easily in the 60, 70 range, which was, for a first day, I need that, I think everybody needs that. It's not going to get any easier.
And that's an old school way too, of seeing who's going to come back the next day or the next week or whenever. I mean, you put the guys through the paces. The worst thing you can have when you're training somebody is you don't want them to leave there thinking, well, this is easy. You want them to respect the business more than anything else. So talk to me about that first full training session, and talk to me about the next morning, man. How was you? Was you sore as hell?
That next day was rough. Yeah. Yeah. Cause it was a Wednesday and I had to get up and go to work that next day. So yeah, that wasn't an easy day to wake up to.
So what was your biggest issue? Like when you first started taking bumps, a lot of guys, the issues tucking the chin. Me personally, it was learning to keep my heels from slamming into the mat, man. The first training session I ever had, when I got home that night, because we had to drive straight 8 hours just to train, and then 8 hours back. So, man, by the time I got home that night, I never felt it. It never affected me while we were training, but I was letting my heels slam into the mat every time I took a bump. And I never felt it until I got home, man, and went to pull my shoes off, man, and I'd stone bruised both of my heels. Dude, I thought I was going to die. When I pulled my shoes off, I thought my heel was coming off with it. What was your thing? Did you have any issues like that, or was it kind of smooth sailing?
No, mine was right in the forearm area. I don't know if I was maybe smacking too hard, or if maybe that was hitting a little sooner. Right. But yeah, like right from, I'd say, my mid elbow to the top of my wrist, where it was black and blue for a couple of days. Yeah. But like I said, I don't know if that was from putting them down too early, or maybe if that was just smacking a little too hard. I mean, I had a few where you hit the back of your head, but I think everybody does. Eventually, you realize that doesn't feel good, and you try to work around that. But.
Right, no doubt about that. What about hitting the ropes, man? Because now it wasn't nowhere near like the hills, but my first day hitting the ropes, man, you go to running them ropes, and you come home and. Man, you realize them ropes are unforgiving, man. When I got home that night, I had bruises all over my back. And, I mean, you can feel them ropes. It's one of them things like the heels. When we were in there and the adrenaline's flowing, I didn't really feel it. But, man, when I got home that night, dude, my whole back was eat up, man. And just what did you think about hitting the ropes? Do you have that same kind of issue? Or
Yep. Yes. Yeah. Right there at the upper back, right at the kind of shoulder blade area. Yeah, it was kind of pretty bad, and I didn't have like you said, like you had the 8 hour drive, but mine was a round trip, 2.5 hours. So
Right.
yeah, by the time I got home, you could feel that, and shower sucked. Like I hated taking a shower when I was learning the ropes.
Right. So look, so take me through your training into your first match, man. You've made it through training, and it's time for your first match. Talk to me about the lead up to your first match, man. Was you nervous as hell? What was going on mentally with you?
Oh, it was beyond nervous. In fact, one of the previous guests, Blaze Ray, it was my first match was a battle royal, and he was in it, and already nervous enough. And I had worked security, and I had seen all the guys work, and I was like, okay, that's not somebody to be really trifled with. And one of the first spots, I get him in the corner in the battle royal, and you're working, trying to eliminate everybody, and I threw an errant punch and actually tatered him across the nose, which and he receded me, and rightfully so. But that was that wasn't particularly fun. It really didn't instill a lot of confidence that that's the first thing that happens.
Right.
But then the second match happened, and then it was really the third match, my third weekend, where I was wrestling Michael Jablonski, and that was the match where that was the match where it kind of clicked, where it's like I can do this. Like it's gonna be hard. It's not gonna be easy, but it gave me the confidence inside where it's like, no, I'll be okay eventually. Like this will pass.
And
Kind of less nervous each time.
Right. Good training, proper training goes a long way. I mean, I'm always nervous, dude. I was nervous before we started this podcast. If I had a match, I'd be 10 times as nervous, man. 30 years in, I'd be 10 times as nervous, dude. But proper training goes a long way with getting you through those first matches, because if you're properly trained, the one thing you can realize, and you do realize that if nothing else, I can get through this. You know what I mean? Yeah, I can go out there and I can get through this match, man. May not be the greatest, but I'm confident I can get through. I'm confident in my abilities. And proper training does that, dude. It gives you that confidence that, you know what's going on. We all make mistakes, but you need to know what's going on in there.
Yeah. And I helped for years with the academy past me being trained, where it was just me getting the reps in and showing new guys the same stuff. But and even to this day, like if there's like a something big, like I still get nervous. I think everybody does, especially right before you walk to the ring.
Right. Right. So look, talk to me about maybe your first year of wrestling. Did you branch out any from Pro Wrestling Mid-South, or did you stay right there at Pro Wrestling Mid-South your whole first year?
No, I stayed there the first year. Like I said, I worked under a mask, so I mean, it was a gimmick where it was designed for me to learn from,
right,
more than anything. Before I did become me now, it wouldn't have been the same had I just started like this by any stretch, because there's guys now that I go back and I watched, I'm like, oh wow, that was really good. I need to pull from that. And I didn't have those influences then. It took learning through a mask and being not I don't want to say my real self, but because it was still kind of me, but it wasn't really me turned up to 10. Whereas now it's still me, but it's me up to 10 or 11. But no, I didn't need to branch out. I needed to stay where I was and get reps and learn the psychology, pick brains, stuff like that.
Dude, I was the same way. I started out under a hood, man. And actually, I stayed under a hood for probably 8 or 9 years, man, or so before I had took it off a time or two at different places, just kind of test the water. But here's the thing. Like you said, it took that time for you to become who you are now. See, that's something I like to tell young guys, man. When you first get into pro wrestling, you first get trained and you're starting to wrestle, I believe that young guys don't need a gimmick right off the bat. As you get more experience and learn who you are in the wrestling ring and in the wrestling business, that's when the gimmick will kind of come on its own, and normally it's part of your personality, if not basically all of your personality. Under a hood, I was just like you. It was a part of me. I had that part of me where it was really part of me, but I felt like I kept it on so long that in the end, I wish I'd have took it off earlier because I didn't get a chance to talk. Being a hood guy, my whole promo was a scream. That was it. Whoever I was with would do the talking and I'd do a scream. And I wish I would have taken the hood off earlier so I could talk. While you were under the hood, did you get to talk or did you have a mouthpiece out there with you?
No, I got to talk later on. And that was just as nerve-wracking as those first matches. But yeah, it was towards the end of the match run that I got to talk a little bit. Promos weren't anything, particularly special, but it was kind of getting comfortable with the microphone, getting comfortable in front of the people talking.
Right.
And then when it was time for the hood to come off, then it was, I said, still a little different because then it was different from what I had been used to versus now where it's 10 times easier.
Right.
I think that's with most people.
Right. For me, the hood was slightly a security blanket. It kind of, you're out there, but you're still kind of shielded from your real self out there a little bit with that hood on. So how long did you wear a hood? How long did you wrestle under the
hood? They came off October 2022. So probably right about halfway. Here we are almost 4 years in. So definitely the first 2 years was under a hood. And another thing, a lot of guys, because we usually try to start people under masks to get acquainted with working. And one of the things is like you said, like a lot of people don't get they are the super nervous where it's like it's almost like you can tell they're wearing a mask versus that mask is just part of them. And one of the things I had to tell somebody was when you're under that hood, you're not you. No one's gonna follow you out here after the show and make fun of you. It's this kind of stuff like that where it kind of helps, pull them out a little better.
So talk to me about the first day, the first night you pulled the hood off and you went out as yourself, man. Talk to me about that day, man. How was that mentally? Was it just as nerve-wracking as the very first match?
It wasn't that bad. It was more freeing. Because like I said, you're not under a hood, but we had kind of been putting the ball rolling on what it was going to look like afterwards. After the hood came off, it just was a matter of when do we need to do it? And, it had happened at Glory Lasts Forever, which is, our biggest show of the year. That's our WrestleMania.
Right.
And like I said, it came out of nowhere. By that point I was by no stretch, like the main event guy by any means, but I wasn't opening match anymore either. I had kind of went up the card a little bit and had a couple of tag title reigns by that point. So the fans knew who that character was, and some of them maybe even suspected who it was underneath, but they never really pinpointed it. So then when it did happen, that was a much bigger shock than anything.
Right.
What was the response to it? Because like you always had that fear of the mask's going to come off and no one's going to know who it is, and they still didn't know who it was. But the fact of the good guy turning and that was the big shock that made it easier.
Right. Let me ask you this. This is just a little thing. When I first pulled my hood off, man, I caught myself constantly reaching up to my head during matches, gonna maybe adjust it a little bit. You have that? Did you do that any?
I never did have that. I don't know if I was just ready to be out of it or what, but no, I never did have that afterwards, which, like I said, after being under it so long, it felt weird in the pre-match as far as getting ready, where it's like, I don't have 4 or 5 layers I've got to put on anymore.
Right. Yeah, well, I was under, like I said, I was under the hood about eight straight years, maybe a little snid bit here and there during that I pulled it off if I was going to be a babyface somewhere. But man, it was kind of like wearing glasses. If I take my glasses off now and I keep them off too long, I'll catch myself reaching up for them, going to adjust them, and they're not there, So you mentioned tag team champions, and you are currently one half of the Pro Wrestling Mid-South Tag Team Champions with the Uber Destroyer. So talk to me about being Pro Wrestling Mid-South Tag Team Champions right now, man.
I'm having more fun than ever. And tag team wrestling I don't think that's a beginner step either. I think that's more advanced learning because it takes a different psychology. You can't just put two single guys together and make them a tag. But even just from having a match standpoint, it's not two individual single matches. It's one tag match, and it needs to operate sort of a certain way. That took some getting used to. But, I mean, other than that, I grew to respect tag team wrestling a whole lot more. Not that I ever disrespected it, but doing it and watching it are two different things. And then once you do it for so long and you get used to it and you kind of know what you're doing, then you're like, oh wow, that's not easy, especially when you watch guys that you used to love watching as tag wrestling.
Right. Tag wrestling can be fun. To me, man, you can really have some fun in a tag match, and there's so much more going on. Like you said, you're out there, there's four guys. You know, there needs to be a continuity between the four of you. You know, it's more than just you and your opponent out there. It changes everything, even the spots you run and how you run them. You gotta. I loved it, dude. I was a single wrestler for years and years, and then I started tagging up with Ron McClarty, and man, I really enjoy tag wrestling. Man, there's just so much. Here's the thing: you can be so much more creative because you got two more parts to work with than you do in a singles match. You know.
Yes. It's another challenge too to make sure everybody involved is on the same page. Sometimes that's a little tricky. But yeah, like you said, there's two extra guys there that have their own ideas, have their own style. And so finding a way to kind of have everybody have their moments and everybody kind of still building the same thing. You know, it's hard when you get somebody in there that's not either one, not wanting to cooperate, or two, they're wanting to do what they want to do. And it's this way, or, you know, it's going to suck, you know. Yeah. But I'm pretty good at keeping things on track. I'm not perfect, but
yeah, for me, as long as we can make it make sense, I can work with it. I don't care who comes up with what, as long as we can logically make it make sense where people can understand it. Man, you can do all kind of creative stuff in a tag match, man. If you got a manager out there, the one thing, managers in general, most of the time, especially around the independent scene, if you see people with managers, nothing I hate worse than seeing a manager out there with somebody and they don't even use him for nothing. He's just standing there, basically just walking around, drawing attention from the ring where it should be focused at. Well, the way I view it, if you're going to be out there and part of the match, then we need to figure out something for this manager. He needs a spot or two in here too, so we all got something we can tell a complete story, because, you know, I see it all the time. Managers, a lot of times, especially now, because I don't think a lot of times nowadays they're taught properly. They go out there and they think in their head, I feel like they think it's their job to get heat. Well, it is to an extent, but it's not your job to draw the focus away from what's going on in the wrestling ring to you, when we need everybody paying attention to what's going on here, because this is where the story's being told over here, you know. And do y'all even have managers at Pro Wrestling Mid-South?
We do. We have Douglas Hart, who he's come along as a manager. We have Alvin Minnick. We try not to have just too many of them, because then it kind of does muddy the water on what other guys are doing. But yeah, I agree with you. Like I hate, just as a fan, when I'm watching something and you're like, okay, you're getting yourself over. You're not getting your guy over. You're distracting. Like you said, that's not fun to be out there when that's happening. But it's really not. It's not even fun to watch. You know.
Right. Experienced guys. If I'm in the ring with somebody and there's a manager out there and he's not letting the focus be on the match, man, grab a headlock. If ain't nobody looking at you right then, you might as well set the match down a little bit and let the focus come back, because anything you do, especially if it's pivotal to the story you're telling, if everybody's looking over here at him, everybody's going to miss it anyway. So, set the match down somehow until the focus returns back to what's going on in the ring. And Douglas Hart, I've actually had Douglas on here a couple of times. I had him on here as a co-host when I first started this, man. He originally was y'all's announcer, right? Or
yes.
ring announcer?
Yes.
Okay, and I noticed it's been about probably 5-6 months ago now that he kind of transitioned into being a manager.
That sounds about right. Yeah, I remember it was last fall, and he's a guy too. Like, his knowledge of the business, as far as, especially just from a historical point of view,
Right.
it's nuts. Like, to hear him talk about stuff, I learned stuff, and I consider myself a pretty well-read student. So yeah, he's definitely one to keep your eye on, and he's, like I said, he's so knowledgeable.
Right. He could talk, man. I can see him being an excellent heat-getting manager, dude. I really can. He's kind of got that, for a fan, he's kind of got that I want to punch him in the face look anyway, And like you said, with his knowledge, man, he can come out there and really be arrogant more than likely, just spouting off stuff that nobody else has no clue about, Right. And Alvin, talk about him for a minute.
I fully worked around Alvin just a handful of times. I remember there was a show we had last year where he worked as my manager that night, and it was a benefit show for Blaze Ray, and that was the first time I'd ever really worked with him. And then the most recent time is when we actually had James Storm at our show, and it was me and Peyton Pee Wee Pitts with Alvin in our corner versus Brandon Ray and James Storm.
Right.
So, like I said, one, you're out there with a name, but then two, when you do have somebody that does have that far reaching, into the business, especially in this area, they say, like, you can't ask for any better tools to work with than that. Because Alvin knows.
Go ahead.
Alvin knows. Alvin knows his, his stuff. He's been working since late 70s, 80s. Something like that. So yeah, like you said, and he's another one too. When you hear him talk about stuff, you're just like, oh, wow. Like, I never knew that, or never thought of it that way.
Right. So talk to me about Pro Wrestling Mid-South in general, man. Man, the one thing I know about you guys, everybody I interact with from Pro Wrestling Mid-South, man, y'all are all super respectful. Y'all respect the wrestling business. Y'all all are old school throwbacks as far as the way you wrestle in the ring, from the things I've seen, and just the mentality of how wrestling ought to be presented. So talk to me about, obviously, Greg Anthony. That's all Greg Anthony influence. So talk to me about pro wrestling in general and what it means to you, and then talk to me about Greg Anthony. Not just as the trainer, but as the boss man, how it is to work for Greg.
Greg's easy to work with. Sometimes he's one of those, we're going to do things this way, and you need that. Right. Sometimes being a dickhead is what gets the job done. He's not, that's not name calling. That's just, he's trying to run a business, and sometimes business requires somebody to make decisions.
Right.
But yeah, as far as, the throwbacks, we try to kind of lean that into the new guys. Like, it was leaned into me. If you're confusing the people, you're losing them.
Exactly.
And it's another one of those things that, like, as a fan, you maybe know that, but you don't know it in that terminology. And then once you hear that, once you're in the business, you're kind of like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. I never thought of that. But yeah, we all work really old school. Like I said, there's nothing, you're not going to come to our show and you're not going to see Canadian destroyers. You're not going to see, just some of the crazier, riskier high spots, simply because we know how to do other things that we don't have to do that.
Right.
Kind of like wrestling's pretty much all psychology. So mean, it's what you condition your audience to.
Exactly. It's all psychology. That's one thing I see with a lot of the young wrestlers today. A lot of them, I feel like, put their matches together from the moves and the spots they're going to do, where I was always taught, look, I let my story dictate what I'm doing, my moves, whatever we're trying to tell the audience right then is I don't do no more than I need to do to tell that story. You know, I don't put my match together from, well, we're going to do this, and this, and hope it works. I put my match together from up here as far as, you know, here's where we've been, here's where we are, and here's where we want to be next week. So how do we get there? That dictates my move set of what I actually do in the ring. I don't just go in there with I'm going to do this, and this, because, I mean, what are you doing it for if it don't accentuate your story? You're just wasting it anyway. You could save it. Maybe it fits in next week's part, you know? So I feel like Greg, that's one thing, Greg, I feel like he really works with you guys. See, I was trained and thrown in the ring, and you kind of had to learn everything else just on the fly and pick it up, psychology and everything. But I feel like maybe, does Greg take the time with you guys to kind of explain to you why we're doing it this way, why we're doing this, and why we're doing it this way? So then you understand that why it's done that way in the wrestling business, or it should be done that way. Does he work with you guys like that?
Yes, he does. Yeah. And that's something too, like because me and Thud Powell, we have a tag team. We're called the Punishment Company, and we do travel, not just a lot, but we do travel quite a bit, where we do get to go see other styles of how things are done and how things are put together. And sometimes it's just, I don't want to say mind blowing, but like when you tell people, you know, yeah, pretty much what we do, we can call in the ring, that throws people off for some reason. Like I said, I've never understood. I always liked the Ric Flair style work, where it's usually called on the fly. Like, I like to have like at least a general idea of what's going to happen, but I don't have to have, I'm going to breathe at this moment, I'm going to grab this wrist lock. Like, I don't like that. And I try not to do that. I mean, you got to be aware of who you're in there with. But yeah, I think that's really becoming a lost art. Not that I'm, super vet or anything, but as I said, just going other places and seeing how things are put together and how things work. Like I said, it's different. It's different everywhere you go.
Right.
I said some places call absolutely everything you're going to do, and some places are, hey, I kind of got an idea. We'll fill it out there. If I do this is what's kind of going to happen. Where you got to have some kind of plan to when you're going out there, but like I said, you don't have to call everything.
Right. I'm with you. It's a lost art, man. And here's the thing: I see so many people, you can tell they had everything down to the T that they were going to do. And if they go out there and they botch a spot or mess up a little bit, or so a lot of times, even if the crowd's not reacting like they thought they were, it's like a deer in the headlights, where you got to be, think about wrestling, man, it can change at the snap of a finger. So you got to be able, if the crowd's not buying what you're selling, you got to start selling them something else right on the spot. You can't just keep pushing what you're trying down their throats, because you confuse them, you lose them. Like you said, if they're not into what you're doing, you're wasting your time anyway. And it's a lost art, and I feel like Greg is one of the places where guys that are being trained and being brought into this business are still being brought in the way pro wrestlers really should be brought in, man. Here's the thing, I don't believe fans come to wrestling strictly for the moves and the stuff they see in the ring. I think what they come for is the why, the who, the what, the where, the why this is happening. That's what draws me into wrestling. You can have a 5-star match, but if I don't understand why it's happening, I don't care about it. I don't care how good it is. If you can't draw me into it, it's a waste of your time. It's a waste of my time watching.
Yeah, and I've heard it put to me like this too by people that do go with the move for move. When you go to a movie, just because you didn't like the movie doesn't mean you get your $10 back. And that's true to an extent, but I also don't have to come back and give you another $10 next week.
Exactly.
One of those like, okay, you had me, I tried, it didn't work, I'm not coming back. That happens.
Yeah, ain't nobody coming back to a bad movie. And if you give them a bad match or a bad wrestling card, like you said, just because you got their $10 that one night don't mean you're going to get it back next week. And if you don't get it back next week, you didn't do your job. It's as simple as that. It's all about that next payoff. That's what wrestling is about. That's why every week you further a story. So next week people want to come back. That's why people watch TV shows. The best ones are the ones that draw you into what they're doing. They leave you hanging till the next week and you're right there ready for next week. Well, if you don't accomplish that on a wrestling show, then first of all, nobody's going to be there next week. So you just wasted all your time and effort. People need to, wrestling is 100% all psychology in my book, man. The physical part, I feel like it's 85-15, dude. To be honest with you, I feel like it's 85% or 90% psychology, and it's the 10 or 15% of what you actually do, the moves you actually do, man. It's more about wrestling to me is about conveying emotion. That's how you get fans. You tap into certain emotions from them fans, and if you can do that, then you got them. They're hooked in. It's like having a fish on the hook.
Yeah. And I was listening to Bubba Ray talk on Busted Open, I think it was last week, where he said it took him, one, getting older, but two, like especially like when he went to the WWE to change that mindset of, okay, yeah, in ECW we're going to do 3-3Ds, we're going to put people through 5 tables, and then he said, well, once he went to the WWE and they were like, no, we're going to do 1 3D, we're going to break 1 table. That means more than if you've done everything else. Right.
Well, look, dude, you see it up above your head. You mentioned his name earlier. This caught my eye. That's the reason it's up there. Brandon sucks eggs. Now, you talk about Brandon Ray. So, and for the people who don't know, you explain to them what Brandon sucks eggs is and where it comes from, dude. You explain it to them.
Well, that's another throwback. That comes from Terry Funk. He's a hard guy to study. So I was like, but if you're going to steal something that you can't, how do you not, you could steal from far worse people than Terry Funk. But yeah, it came from Terry Funk telling Dusty Rhodes he sucks eggs. He's an egg-sucking dog.
Right, man. When I seen because I have to go scavenge all this stuff from Facebook, pictures and stuff. I'm probably the worst Facebook stalker in history. If I didn't stalk all y'all's pages, there wouldn't be none of this. And man, when I seen the shirt you had made and then the picture of Terry Funk beside both of you wearing the shirt, man, popped me good, dude. I thought, yeah, I like that, man. It's kind of like I broke Wahoo's leg with Greg Valentine, dude. Really cool stuff, man. Terry Funk's one of my favorite. I mean, truthfully, I still don't feel like Terry Funk gets the credit he deserves in the wrestling business, man. He is absolutely one of the very best, most entertaining guys in the history of the business, in my opinion.
Yeah, and he's another, like we were talking earlier, like the influences I would have had, 4 or 5 years ago, pre getting in the business, weren't who I would have had now. And Terry Funk's one of those guys. He'd always been wrestling. When I was a kid, I'd been wrestling since the 60s. Right. But it takes getting older to really, when you see it and you're like, oh wow, I really appreciate that. That was actually really good. He's one of those guys. It's like him and Harley Race. Like I think Harley Race just had the Dark Side of the Ring episode. There's another guy that how does he not get talked about more than he does? Like, right. I said,
Harley may very well be the last generation of really hard-nosed, grizzled professional wrestling, grown-ass men professional wrestlers, dude. A lot of people say it's Flair's generation, but I feel like it really kind of stopped a generation before Flair. I feel like Harley Race, guys of that era, Terry Funk, because Terry Funk's been around, like you said, forever. And he grew up in the wrestling business. His dad's a wrestler, his brother's a wrestler. Those are really the last of the really hard-nosed, grizzled pro wrestlers, man, that really understood this business, man, because Harley wasn't flashy. Harley wasn't pretty. About the prettiest he ever was when he had the kinky hair and he had bleached it blonde. And, that was his own. Look, that's about as made up as I'm going to get, man. But in the ring, man, he could deliver every single night.
Yeah, I read his book here a couple months ago, and something he said in it was, I don't claim to be the best talker. I was never a great promo guy. I preferred to have my wrestling talk for me. And that's a powerful statement, especially in today's world. Like I said, I think the book came out, 20 years ago, but said even now that still kind of resonates. There's not a whole lot of people that do that. Like we were talking about, everyone wants to do a bunch of moves, but it doesn't mean anything. Whereas like when you watch a Harley race match, everything mattered.
Right. So talk to me about this, how like you just said, your influences that you had before you got into wrestling have changed now that you're in the business. Who else besides Terry Funk or Harley Race do you because we all kind of take little things, I think, from everybody. So who else is somebody that you look up to and is an influence on you now that you're in the wrestling business?
Big one's William Regal. Like I said, just from looking at my my gear, that's a pretty easy one. But he's another one of those guys that doesn't get talked about. But then when you watch his matches, it's like watching wrestling gold.
Right.
There's Regal. There's a little bit of Finley there. There's a little bit of, I don't want to say Taz as far as the hard nose, but definitely the look of the singlet. There's Taz there.
Well, see, I was just going to say this to you before we got off. To me, you just mentioned Finley. When I look at you in your gear, I see the Finley influence in the gear. To me, man, it's more, maybe not the gear, your body type, your build. To me, when I see you in your gear, you look like Fit Finley to me. Your body type reminds me of Fit Finley. I'm glad you said that, man. And Finley, Taz, William Regal. I actually got to meet William Regal when when Memphis Championship Wrestling had the developmental deal, and they sent him down here. One of the coolest guys I've ever met in my life. Here's the thing about celebrities or stars in general. Sometimes you meet people that you idolize or you look up to, or they're just stars, and when you meet them, immediately they tank your impression of them. You realize, man, ain't what he was cracked up to be. Ain't what I thought he'd be. William Regal's just the opposite. You meet him, and then your impression of him just skyrockets, dude. He's humble. He was always willing to help, talk, everything, man. Really cool dude, and one of the best, the absolute best in the ring pro wrestlers that you're ever gonna find.
Yeah, and another quote that he said where it kind of stuck with me too was he wasn't a natural at wrestling, which neither was I. But he wasn't a natural at wrestling. Everything he learned inside the ring, he had to learn it. It wasn't easy, like I said, and that was something that really stuck with me. I think really helped me kind of stick with him as far as really starting to watch him in a different light. Because like I said, he was another one that he wrestled when I was a kid, and it was was what it was. I wasn't particularly thrilled with that. He wasn't the big muscle-headed guy. But then now that I'm older and I'm in wrestling, that's another guy that you see in a different, you see completely differently when you watch him put together a match.
So let me ask you this. When I first started training, I had another guy I was training with. Of course, he'd been there. He was there before I got there. He'd actually wrestled some. And one of the first things he told me, he says, you'll never watch wrestling the same way again as you did before. How was that for you? Pre in the business, post in the business, like once you went to that first session, did it totally kind of change the way you viewed pro wrestling, even when you're just watching it?
Yeah, and it was a gradual thing too, because I remember it was one of the roll-up pins where I got so angry with myself that I just couldn't do, like, I couldn't just master this. And I had mentioned to someone, I was like, I don't understand. I've always been a fan of this. I've always watched this. I don't know why I can't why I'm not getting this. And that was the explanation, was because you've never had to do it. You know, it's a different mindset of doing it versus watching it. You know what it looks like. You don't understand why you're doing it yet.
Look, I'm glad you said that, because the Fargo strut, obviously all of us from here around here growing up watching this strut, from Fargo to Jerry Lawler, Bill Dundee's little strut, Jeff Jarrett. So during Memphis Championship Wrestling, me and my partner were out filming some vignettes, and there's a street in Memphis called Fargo. So the producer got the idea. He said, well, let's film y'all in front of this sign, on this street in front of this sign, doing the Fargo strut, and we'll cut up to it. You know, when I was a kid, I could do it. As a kid, I could do it. Man, when we went to do it, dude, and it's actually out there on film too, it is the most horrible. For some reason, I could not wrap my head around the movements. I don't know what it was. My partner's over here strutting his ass off, and I'm looking like a damn robot, basically just moving my hands, and they're laughing. I'm like, I don't know what it is, man. When I was a kid, I could strut the hell out of this, but I cannot do it now. It's like that sometimes. Just because you see it and you know what it's supposed to look like, when you go to apply it technically, you don't realize that just because it looks this simple don't quite mean it is this simple. And you're talking about wrestling moves. I'm talking about something as dumb as the strut, man. Worst strut in history right here, man. I'll never Fargo strut again, dude. Ever, man. So did you ever master your roll up?
Oh yeah. Yeah, like I said, and then but it took hearing that for it to click, where it's like, okay, well, just treat it as something new, and then it you know, it came easier. But yeah, that was like one of those very first frustrations.
So look, man, talk to me about your goals and aspirations in the wrestling business. Are you content with wrestling like you are now, or do you want to maybe make a full-blown career out of this?
Really, time will tell. One of the really first things that really made me start doing this now was I needed my son, who's going to be 10 next month, to really see that when you apply to something, you're going to do it.
Right.
You know, I really think he needed to see that with his eyes, of not just me and, you know, his mother telling him, you know, oh yeah, you can accomplish whatever. It's like I really wanted him to have an example of that.
Right.
Now, does that include going to a bigger stage? You know, I don't know. I'm not obviously not against that. But yeah, like I said, I'm open to anything. The only conversation I'll say no to is a conversation that's never, you know, doesn't happen.
Right. Well, let me ask you this. I know here recently you have been traveling a little bit. So talk to me about some of the places that you've been lately, away from Pro Wrestling Mid-South, and how you liked it, and just how it was compared to Pro Wrestling Mid-South.
I go to a show out in Oklahoma, in the Tulsa area. It's called Wrestling for a Cause, WFC for short. Really, how that came about was Tim Rockwell had won our unified title, and him obviously being an outsider. I've always been the guy that I'll talk to the new kid. That doesn't bother me.
Right.
And we just kind of hit it off, you know, and that was kind of where I said that was where that came from. Was he said, hey, anytime you and Thud want to come to Oklahoma, you know, holler at me. And sure enough, that was my first out of the company show, was last May, was when we went out there for that show. And I said, and that was a 7-hour drive. We got there, I want to say around 4 or 5, whenever call time was. Wrestle our match, wait to the end of the show, 7 hours back home. Like, we got to watch the sun come up, and we watched it set, you know. So that was our first experience as far as going out. We stuck with them a lot, you know. We have plans to go back in the future, just nothing immediately. We went back in August and September, and then I went in February, is where I worked Eric Rowan from, you know, the Wyatt family.
Oh, I didn't know that, dude.
Yeah, that was a big deal because we had heard kind of rumblings of what might happen, and when I had heard that, I was like, okay, I'll really believe that when I see it because I'm a huge Bray Wyatt fan. And then,
Right.
sure enough, yeah, that came to pass. It was a 6-man tag, and then, like I said, yeah, that was the last time I went. Was the end of February.
Well,
Since then, I've been to.
no, go ahead. Go ahead.
Other than that, there's a show out in Middle Tennessee, Premium Pro Wrestling. Worked for them a little bit. Then last month we actually went to Indiana, and I'd never been to Indiana, period. So that was even fresh up there. Worked
Right.
for Supreme Pro Wrestling.
Well, you starting to get out and branch out. How are you wrestling styles? How? Because I mean, here's the thing: different places, fans are different. Styles could be a little different. Talk to me about that. Was there any challenges once you got there working with these other people or anything, or did it just smooth as could be?
No, because I'm pretty adaptable. So, like I said, I kind of see what whoever I'm wrestling, see what they can do, and I can kind of I can work with that. I can kind of adapt to that. So there hasn't been a bad experience. There's not been one where I was like, I have no idea what to do or anything like that. Like I had a match last month, the one in Indiana had with a kid named Caden Brooks, and he's a shoot wrestler, like all through high school, and I'm not sure if he's in college or not, but he did like amateur wrestling. So I was like, okay, I can kind of do a little technical style and kind of go with that. And if I'm in there with someone like a Brandon Ray, I can do a little more hard hitting stuff. It's like I'm pretty able to do a lot of different things.
Yeah, you need to be versatile in the wrestling business, man. You need to be able to work with everybody. It's just as simple as that, man. You really do. So look, Greg Anthony, man, he's the current AIWF world champion. One of the few. There's a lot of people out here with belts calling them world belts, but I mean, me and Greg talked about this. AIWF, man. Affiliates all over our country, all in other countries. I think Greg said they were up to like 140 or so promotions that are under the AIWF umbrella. And with him being the AIWF champion, man, how is it opened some doors for you guys to go to some of these other places? Because I know it's not been long ago, I don't know, 4 or 5 months ago maybe, Greg, was it Chicago he went to defend the belt?
Yeah, he's definitely had a bigger travel schedule, and yeah, like you said, some of them have open doors. Like the Supreme show in Indiana, that was one of them. Don't know if I would have got to go there otherwise.
Right.
But yeah, the AIWF, yeah, he's big into that at the moment. And I don't think there's a better wrestler right now going than Greg. Like I don't tell him I said that, but as far as who needs a world title and who's earned it, that's pretty on the nose, and that's pretty much where that title needs to be.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So
man.
He's a company.
Yeah, Greg is yes, I 100% agree with you, man. He deserves that title. And he told me he said he really always wanted to be the NWA world champion, and he finally realized that it more than likely was never going to happen. And then finally this AIWF thing come along. And like I said, there's a lot of people out there. There's a lot of one company shows who have a world title. To me, I don't really like that personally. I mean, but AIWF, like I said, they've got a lot of promotions all over the world under their banner. So let me ask you this. Here's the $100,000 question. AIWF world title. Is that something that you could see yourself going for somewhere in the near future or anywhere in the future?
Maybe. Yeah, that's definitely a possibility. As far as the IWF, I've really not had any conversations with anybody within the organization, but definitely having Greg so close to home, I know he has, connections and knows people. But no, I don't have any immediate aspirations, but yeah, definitely long term, maybe if that opportunity presented itself. Yeah.
Yeah, man, I think it would be it'd be a nice feather in your cap someday, man. Like I said, and here's the thing, like Greg said, it's getting bigger and bigger. You know, there's more companies coming under the AIWF umbrella, and Greg is a perfect spokesman to carry that belt. I believe. It's solid as you can get, pretty much. From what I know about him, every facet of the wrestling business, from technical to physical to mental, man. The like I said, like we talked about, wrestling to me is all psychology, and Greg really understands wrestling and what it's supposed to be. That's one thing I like about y'all's company. I wish I could see more of it. I guess I'm going to have to actually come to a show. I'm actually going to come to the one y'all are doing in Dresden, because I live in Dresden. And I guess I need to come to the home base and check a few of y'all shows out. And the one thing I do like, you was talking about the mask guys and stuff. I like that. From what I can tell, y'all's wrestling straightforward. Good guys, bad guys. You know, let's put them in the middle, and I don't feel like y'all try to blur the lines and make cool heels or anything like that. I like the way Greg, I feel like he keeps it simple, because that's the easiest way. The simplest and easiest way in pro wrestling is the best way to do it. You can't overcomplicate things to the point where you just can't make sense of it. Nobody can. But when you keep it straightforward, good guy, bad guy, we've got some kind of issue, we're going to settle it in the ring, people understand it. 100% understand it.
Right. I always kind of use my nine-year-old as the test of that. Sometimes we'll be watching something, like usually it's, something on national television, and when he can't understand who the good guy and the bad guy is, that's where I go, okay, that's my compass.
Right. And there's a lot of that. I mean, really, there's a lot of that where you have to, there's a lot where there really to me don't seem like there's, it almost seems like a lot of times the bad guy is actually the good guy, and the good guy might as well be the bad guy, because here's the thing. It's a cool heel. The minute you start getting cheered, you're then a baby face. You're no longer a heel. So you might as well just embrace the fact that, well, I'm a baby face now. Because it's hard for a baby face for people to get behind him when the heel's cooler than he is. Exactly, man. It's confusing to the fans, and that's one thing I like about Pro Wrestling Mid-South, is that it's straightforward, old school, to the point wrestling. Look, we got Joe the Panther variety show. He says, hey guys, I just subbed to you. Joe, I appreciate you watching, man. I appreciate you subscribing. You got a variety show? Dude, holler at me. I can get you some of the best time slots and rates on time slots with Genesis TV. Hit me in my inbox. We can help get you on TV, dude. David, man. Well, hold on, man. That's my bad. I did that. I was going to hit another button and pulled you right out. Dude, I've enjoyed this. I love talking to any of you Pro Wrestling Mid-South guys, because I don't know a lot about you, and this is the way I learn, man. I've had Greg on, Blaze Ray, and you now. I've had Douglas on too. And that's when I find out about Pro Wrestling Mid-South, dude. Let me ask you this. Social media, upcoming bookings. Why don't you before we wrap this up, tell everybody where they can get a hold of you at, and where they can also come see you at.
I use Facebook and YouTube at David Jason Rose. Some of them have DJR in parentheses. But yeah, usually every Saturday at Dyersburg, Tennessee at Pro Wrestling Mid-South. Like I said, if there's anything out of the ordinary, obviously I'm sure to post that. But yeah, that's usually pretty much it.
Every Saturday night, Pro Wrestling Mid-South, Dyersburg. Y'all run Ripley on Friday?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, see, that's something else too, man. I like the fact that Greg tries to keep y'all working as much as possible too. What was it? 6 or 7 months ago, y'all were actually doing 3 nights a week, right?
Yes. Yeah, we were running in Jackson as well.
Right. And that's what guys need. That's how you learn. It's hard to learn once a week or twice a week, man. You need to work at least 3 or more times a week. Then it starts becoming second nature to you. Everything starts moving faster. You progress way quicker. Dude, like I said, it has been my pleasure having you here, man. Like I said, you're a throwback, hard-nosed style, no nonsense. I like that about you. And I'm looking forward to seeing you in action here in Dresden, too. This will actually be the first Pro Wrestling Mid-South I've ever been to. I've never been. All these years, I've never been. And that will be the first Pro Wrestling Mid-South show I come to, and I'm looking forward to it, man, and seeing y'all's product, dude, in person.
Yeah, you just kind of laid it out. That's going to be a tough main event to have. Like I said, I've never been on a show where you're right there, so yeah, that's going to be a good one.
Dude, like I said, once again, thank you so much for giving me your time and coming on here. It's been my pleasure, dude. I learned so much during these shows, man. I just do. And you and your family, y'all have a great night, my friend.
You too. Thank you for having me, Buster.
You're welcome. All right, guys. David Jason Rose. You can see him every single Saturday night, Dyersburg, Tennessee. Ripley on Friday nights. Pro Wrestling Mid-South. Go check this company out. Top-notch wrestling, old school style, family-oriented. So you can take the kids. Go there, have a good time. Guys, tomorrow night, 7 p.m., American Hostile Championship Wrestling. Mark Southern, Mark Manley's back with me tomorrow night. We back together after all this time, and it's going to be all about American Hostile coming up this Saturday night in Campbell, Missouri. Guys, I want to thank each and every one of you for tuning in, interacting. I know it's a lot. I'm fixing to slow down on how many shows we're going to do. I think probably after May, I'm going back to once a week for a while. I'm a little burnt out still. Until tomorrow night, guys, y'all take it easy and everybody have a great night.
I don't ever slow up, no, I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up.
I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement.
Everything I do so instinctive and so passionate. Every word I move so descriptive like an adjective. I got a vendetta against people who patented being negative when you should be getting after it. I got facts over tracks, this and that. Spitting slow, spitting fast, I could roast, I could gas. Think I'm okay at last, but I don't know if that can erase all the past. And the pettiness, a reflection of the emptiness. Hilarious, you think you're worth my time, you're delirious. Mysterious, because you hide behind a fake exterior. Inferior, you know I'll always be a bit superior. Get off of me, this ain't no humble brag. I want you to hear words, you can say them back. I want you to feel free from the chains that last, and to believe in what you got, it was built to last, yeah. Now that I've been put through hell, I never got anyone's help. I had to do it all myself.
I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna